Hello everyone. In this session we're going to discuss the past perfect tense. So before we actually get into the discussion of the tense itself, we are going to look at the meaning of the word perfect. Okay, in fact we're going to look at the origin of this word so that you can understand why it is used for past perfect better, why this word is used. Okay, so if you look at the Latin origin of this word, it has two parts. One is per, meaning through, completely, and facier, okay, meaning do. Okay, we have the word per or the prefix per for a lot of other words like perform, perceive, persuasion, etc. Okay, that means through, completely, and facier is to do, which is the root word for manufacture. Okay, so per, facier becomes perfect over the course of time. Perfectus means something that is completed, done and dusted, that has got nothing to do with the present. It had happened sometime in the past. Okay, so that is the reason we use the word perfect with past for actions that happened in distant past or before another event. Let's get into the detail to understand better. Okay, so the past perfect is used to describe an action that happened or that had completed before a certain moment in the past. Okay, so these two things, that particular moment in the past is what we are looking at, and even before that an event had completed. Let's look at this sentence here. I had brought the clothes inside when it started to rain. Okay, so this certain moment in the past is when it started to rain, and the action that had completed, that I finished doing before it started to rain, was the action of bringing the clothes inside. Okay, so just by looking at the word had, we can understand that this action happened before it started to rain. So this is what I mentioned here as well. If two actions happened in the past perfect is used to show which one happened earlier than the other. So just by looking at the word had, you can understand that that particular thing had happened before the other in the same sentence. So that makes it very clear for a person who is following the sequence of events in a happening, or it could be a story, or it could be some sort of demonstration, some sort of narration of an event. So this is what makes it more clearer in expression. So the child had gone into his house just before the monkeys started attacking people. So again, two things. Which one happened before? The child had gone into his house, inside his house, okay, just before the monkeys started attacking people. So this thing happened later, afterwards. Okay, so let's look at the next one. Some more examples here. The teacher punished the students who had interrupted the class with a noise. So in this sentence, if you can see, you have the past perfect sentence coming after the later action. Okay, meaning what happened first? Did the students make a noise or did the teacher punish first? It was the students making noise that happened first. Okay, so who had interrupted the class with a noise? That had happened before the teacher punished, and it is because of this noise the teacher punished the students. Okay, so even if the sentences are jumbled, just by looking at the position of the word had in the sentence, you can figure out the sequence of the events. She had prayed to God before she started writing the exam. So first she prayed to God and then she started writing the exam. She left for work after she had confirmed that her childcare attendant assured that she would come. Can you see how many verbs there are in this sentence? Okay, first she left. First what happened? She confirmed that her childcare attendant, okay, would come that day. Until she confirmed that her childcare attendant assured that she would come. So again, see, three things happened, and just with one past perfect you can clearly explain this. Okay, let's look at the next sentence. It is used to talk about actions that are totally completed in the past and their effects are not directly felt in the present moment. Obviously, when it is done in the distant past, usually you don't feel the effects as much as you feel with present perfect. Okay, for example, I've just broken a glass and the pieces are just still there on the ground. That is your present perfect. But when you had done something in distant past and another action had happened, that usually doesn't carry any significance in the present moment. Okay, just presumption, but again there are always exceptions. Okay, let's look at some more. So before we go further, we're going to look at the structure of the past perfect tense. So subject, which is the doer of the action, plus had. Here one convenient thing to remember is that had is used for both singular and plural subjects, and this is followed by past participle of the main verb. Okay, it's very easy to remember the past participle. You have a set of verbs in present tense, past tense, and past participle. You can just download any table from the internet. I'm just going to provide a link in the description, so have a look at that to understand more about past participle of a verb. Okay, so it's basically subject plus had plus the past participle of the main verb. So Julia had arrived. Okay, this makes the past participle structure, and then you get the information. Okay, Julia had arrived at the airport before I went to receive them. Okay, so Julia is your subject, had is there, and the past participle of the verb arrive is arrived. They had waited. This is your plural. Okay, so you're still using had. They had waited for the minister for 3 hours before they decided to leave. Okay, so what thing happened first? They waited for the minister and then they decided to leave. Okay, so let's look at the contractions. We know that subject is used in conjunction with had. Okay, so when we are speaking, we always contract or we just squeeze words together to make it easily flowing. Okay, we join the sounds basically. Okay, so I had becomes I'd. We had becomes we'd. You had becomes you'd. He had becomes he'd. She had becomes she'd. It had becomes it'd. They had becomes they'd. Now this can be easily confused with would. I would, we would, you would have the same sort of contractions. Okay, but looking at the sentence structure, you can easily figure out which one is had and which one is would. Okay, looking at the verb form after the contraction can help you know whether the helping verb is would or had. For example, I'd finished the meeting by afternoon. So if you look at the verb form after I'd, it's not in the past participle, it's in the infinite form. Okay, so I would finish would be more appropriate in this case. So that is your future tense. She'd sit in the garden chair for hours. Okay, so would is sometimes used for past habits, that's an exception, but still for the sake of understanding contractions we could use this sentence. So she'd sit in the garden chair for hours. Okay, so this is the infinite form and not the past participle form. So that is your past habits. Now I'd gone walking before I did gardening. So gone is the past participle of go. Is that right? So I had gone is what can be understood here. So this is your past perfect form, right? Now those were with some verbs, and past participle with regular verbs. When you look at regular verbs, the past participle is formed by just merely adding ed to the verb itself. Okay, so walk becomes walked. Create already has e at the end of it, so you just add d, saying created. Talk becomes talked. Cook becomes cooked. So these are your regular verbs. And some more some detail here. If a verb of one syllable ends, okay, if the verb has only one syllable in it, the final consonant gets doubled in the past participle form. For example, you have the verb drop. Drop is only one syllable. Okay, so you can't put ed just like that. It becomes dropped. Okay, so because it is drop and O is a short consonant, it must be followed by a double consonant, right? So dropped. In the same way, add has two consonants. The final consonant is D. Okay, and because it's a single syllable, you just add ed. Added, added. If the final consonant is W, X or Y, you just have to add ed in the past participle and you just don't double it. Okay, we have some examples here. Look at skew. Skew has W at the end, so you just end it with ed. Skewed. Play is also ending with ed, so that is played. Mix, mixed, mixed. Okay, let's go to the next one. These are some more with regular verbs. So those were with W, X and Y, but sometimes you have verbs that end with Y where you remove the Y and you change it into IED. Okay, for past, try becomes cried, try becomes tried, and fry becomes fried, etc. Now let's look at some past participle forms with irregular verbs. Now people, this is an endless list and that depends on your motivation and your observation, how curious you are to learn more verbs. Okay, so this is just like a tip of the iceberg. Okay, so just try to familiarize yourself and see how each verb is used in a different way. Okay, if this is not got right, then you might end up making mistakes when you're actually using the past participle. Okay, so eat, eaten. And one more thing, if you find any irregular verbs that you find interesting in past participle form, you can always post it in the comments box. So eat becomes eaten, drive becomes driven, throw becomes thrown, sing becomes sung, catch becomes caught, buy becomes bought, bring becomes brought. Now buy and bring are often confused. People use bought for brought. Okay, so something to keep in mind. These are words often confused. So let's go to the next one. We've looked at the positive forms, the contractions and the usage with regular and irregular verbs. Let's look at the negative form now. So it's quite straightforward. So you just have to use had with not plus the past participle. Okay, in speech obviously, just the way we have contracted I and had into I'd, had and not becomes hadn't, hadn't, hadn't. Okay, so I hadn't fixed the computer. So here you don't use the contraction between I and had, but you use the contraction between had and not. Okay, usually some people prefer to use I'd not. Okay, but that conveys a different meaning. So you could say I hadn't fixed my computer, because of which I didn't finish my project. And you see how nicely this sentence is framed. You have a sentence with simple past, I didn't finish my project, and before that another action happened, that is you hadn't fixed your computer. So I hadn't fixed my computer, because of which I didn't finish my project. Yesterday I was late for work as I hadn't woken up earlier. So you were late, this thing happened later. The earlier thing was the reason that you hadn't woken up earlier. People, it's very much common to get confused between have and had. Okay, that will come only with practice as you familiarize. Okay, there's nothing to confuse about, because have is your present perfect and had, that D should remind you that it is the past tense form, past perfect form, D, like did. Okay, so that's very easy to remember. Let's go to the question form of the past perfect. So question form in past perfect is formed using the following word order. So you use had, the helping verb had, before the subject, and then the subject is followed by the past participle. So the sentence structure is like subject plus had plus past participle. All that you have to do is you need to put the had before the subject. So had they locked the door before they left? So you're asking, Okay, so these kind of questions usually elicit yes or no answers. Had they logged? Yes or no, or I don't know. Okay, it's not an open-ended question. So had the technician called before he visited? Yes, he did, or no, he didn't. Okay, or I'm sorry, yes, he had, or no, he hadn't. Okay, so that is how you do. If you look at my video on question tags, you can understand this better. Okay, so if you're using WH questions also, the word order can still be like you have the WH question word first, followed by had, then the subject, then the past participle. Okay, similarly. So you just say, if you have a question like had he gone before he came home, that's not a question. Okay, so you could ask like where had he gone before he came home? That's a question. Okay, so what had you planned before coming back to India? Why had he lied before the argument? Okay, so again, past participle can be preceded by WH questions. Let's look at past perfect with adverbs. Okay, this is how it is very commonly used in conversations. Okay, because you're talking about an action that had happened or not happened until that particular point, or yet to be finished, or still not done, or has never been done, etc. So these are the adverbs you generally use with past perfect. So always, never, yet, still, just, and only. So these are some of the adverbs. Okay, so let's look at some examples, sentence structures. So I had just had my dinner. Okay, now people, you might find this sentence confusing. It is a past perfect sentence, but you might notice two hads in the same sentence. The second had is equal to eaten. Okay, I had my dinner means I ate my dinner. So that is, if you just use this sentence I had my dinner, that's a simple past. It's not a past perfect. Okay, I had my dinner is a simple past sentence. But if you just say I had my dinner, so that's a past perfect. Here the second had, I had my dinner, is used for ate. Okay, that means eaten. I had eaten my dinner. Okay, here you just said just, means just at that moment, not very long ago, just at that point. Next one, I had never done snorkeling until I visited the Andamans. Okay, so I had never done. So see, past perfect is used for past actions that were never done until at some point in the past again. Okay, I hope I'm not confusing you there. Okay, if you have any queries, you can always ask me in the comment section, people. Okay, so I had never done snorkeling until I visited the Andamans. The question for this could be something like, had you ever done snorkeling before you visited the Andamans, or until you visited the Andamans? Okay, so this might be a part of a conversation, right? So I had just returned from work when my friends came to my home. Okay, again, I'm using the word just. I had returned. This is another adverb. Next one. I had only explained the situation to my colleagues before I informed my manager. So he didn't ask for any solution, or he didn't take any further action, but he only explained the situation to his colleagues before he informed the manager. Okay, so this thing happened first, the act of explaining the situation to colleagues. Next one. I had still not finished my work when I received a call from home. Okay, so we generally use the word still with present action. I'm still doing this. I'm still not finished. But still can also be used in conjunction with the past perfect had. So I had still not finished my work in the past when I received a call from home. Okay, so this is how you could use adverbs, people. So this is a little bit about the past perfect tense, and if you have any queries, you can always revert to me in the comment section. Thank you.